Once upon a time, many moons ago, there lived a goblin girl. This goblin girl grew up in the forest. She never knew another soul. She spoke to the animals as if they were her best friends. She sang to the trees as if they could hear her. And she danced in the flowers as if there was nothing better than nature itself. She needed no others. The animals were her friends. The plants provided her a warm bed to sleep on, and plenty of fresh fruit to eat. Years went by with the goblin girl alone, happy and surrounded by nature, until she heard the first crack of the fire. Before she and the animals had a chance to react, the forest found itself engulfed in flame, smoke thick in the air and filling her lungs. She watched and ran in horror as the place she called home fell to ruin. Faster and faster the goblin girl ran, struggling to catch her breath. With the air thick around her, she gasped and choked as the flames encircled her, and eventually, when she couldn't hold on anymore, everything went black. "Not yet," a single voice muttered. That's the last thing she remembers before everything changed. Fire, smoke, blackness, a whole year of her life just missing. Empty, no recollection of anything that happened. When she finally opened her eyes, she saw a pair of eyes staring back at her, kind, warm, and concerned. "Are you okay?" the creature said. The being was large, with stone-gray skin and a muscular frame. Armor made of animal hide and fur covered his body, and he held a staff in his left hand. "Are you okay, child?" he repeated. Her head spun. She could hardly feel any part of her body. She felt cold and hot all at the same time. Shaky, but perfectly still. She struggled to understand what this creature was saying. He was clearly speaking to her, but she had never spoken to anyone before. She had no understanding of any language. To him, he saw a goblin, pale green in complexion, with dark spots of what looked like dirt under her, across her skin. Out of her hair grew sticks and thorns, and he swore her hair looked similar to that of vines. He himself was a druid, and a rather powerful one at that. But in all his years, he had never encountered nature's curse quite like this. She glanced at her surroundings. The moon was high in the sky. The grass was still as soft as ever against her limbs. She felt beneath her back a weight, something sturdy and wooden. A tree? To her feet, she saw a round red fruit, ripe and ready for a bite. An apple tree? Pull, she struggled to say. The word was foreign to her, one she didn't even know herself. The man, a Goliath, reached for an apple on the ground and extended it to her. "You like apples, little one?" he asked, ushering it to her mouth for her to take a bite. The goblin took a bite of the fruit, noting its sweetness and the way its juice flowed down her chin. In her strange, weakened state, the taste felt almost euphoric. No other meal had tasted so sweet and nourished her so. "Do you have a home?" The goblin girl looked at the Goliath, not understanding his words. She felt dizzy. Her body shook, and her lips felt dry as the desert sun. The Goliath reached out to her to help her stand. She looked scared, vulnerable. He lifted her body off the ground, carrying her as a father would their child, and he noticed her hesitate at his touch. She felt cold, and it was clear that she wouldn't last the night without proper food and water. The Goliath sought nursing after her health. He gave her his own bed to sleep on, gave her water to drink, and fetched berries from the wilds to feed her. She did not speak, nor understand the common or goblin tongues, but still would ask every day to eat an apple from the apple tree outside his home. From this love of apples, he named her Appleseed. Many months went by as Appleseed's health began to improve. She regained her strength, learning how to fight, like from the Goliath man. She regained speed, becoming like a petal blowing in a strong wind. She became hardy, able to take on a hit and unafraid to feast on even the most strange-looking of wild mushrooms. She became smart, quickly grasping language and becoming surprisingly articulate. She became charismatic, a naive yet happy friend to all she came across. And more than anything, she became wise, and her connection to nature grew and grew. With that, so did her body. Her hair became vines with sticks and branches sticking out. Her eyes became more yellow than before, somehow sporting pupils shaped similar to that of apples. Mud and dirt stuck to her body and stayed permanently no matter how many washes. Her plant nature was an enigma to the Goliath, although she certainly didn't seem to mind. Papa, as she affectionately referred to the Goliath as, became a father figure to her. He taught her the art of druidry. He taught her spellcasting and ancient arts of connection to nature, and most importantly, the ability to turn into animals. Her first journey into wild shaping was one he was excited for. He often preferred to roam around his body in his bare form rather than that of his Goliath body. And she had grown excited at the possibilities of becoming other creatures. So many animals lived amongst their cottage. Rabbits, deer, wolves. The possibilities were endless. Her first journey into when the time came for her to attempt her first wild shape, she had a clear vision in her mind. She had seen her papa become a bear so many times, and what fun would it be to be his little cub? However, she was surprised when she found that shape was not the case. She had transformed all right, but was surprised to find herself shaped into an awakened apple tree. Tall and hardy, she was confused. Druids can't become plants. Can they, Papa? Papa found himself more in awe of her than ever. He had only ever been able to master animal form, no matter how many forms he had tried. And yet, she could become a plant in a blink of an eye? No Druid had ever done this. Was it finally time? Was it finally time for her to learn how he had found her? Papa told her that he had found her underneath his apple tree one night. He had no idea where she came from, just that she was deathly ill. An affliction caused by nature itself, it seemed. He had never seen anything like her, and honestly, he found it quite puzzling. With the heavy burden of not knowing who or what she was, Appleseed made a decision. She was to become a Druid adventurer, discovering secrets of the world and being a shelter to those who could not defend themselves. Her papa gifted her a winter wolf pelt and gave her one last warm hug. Told her to keep safe as she ventured off. With tears in her eyes, she set forth. Along the way, she encountered many allies. A dragonborn, a warforged, a halfling, humans and orcs and owlbears and furbolgs too. They all became her friends in her years of adventuring, fighting bandits, nobles, powerful corrupt dragons, and all enemies in between. She even found herself on the brink of death once or twice, which, oddly enough, is how she met the love of her life, a skeleton captain. Death seemed oddly familiar to her, as she found herself on the void of nothingness on the edge of worlds, There she saw a skeleton man, bearing a captain's hat and a military uniform. He extended a bony hand to her. "Are you here for the skeleton army?" he asked. She answered. She looked at him in surprise. "I'm no skeleton." She laughed. "I'm a goblin. At least, I think I am." "You need not be a skeleton to be in the skeleton army," he replied dully. "You turn when you die, and let me tell you, it's far more fun than life." "In life you get to learn more about yourself," she smiled back. He seemed an awfully gloomy skeleton. "And in life you get to meet all sorts of wonderful people." His bony face almost smiled back when he responded. "And yet, in your death, I seem to have met the most wondrous person of all." She blushed at this, and the two found themselves immediately drawn to one another. When she was resurrected, she found herself almost unwilling to go. She didn't want to leave him. It was only 4 years later that she found herself tasked with clearing out a tomb full of undead, and encountered a familiar bony face. "There you are," he grinned. "I've spent my whole return to life trying to find you." Over the past years, Appleseed has begun to realize her existence was not entirely her own. She felt as though she was a goblin, and looked as though she was a goblin. She was small in stature, and petite in frame, but she could take on plant forms. Found herself sprouting vines and sticks, and even small flowers in her skin and hair when she felt happy. She didn't know what entirely she was, but that's what she was determined to find out. Armed with a loving skeleton partner, many friends, including dragons and mice and dolls and fellow goblins and fae and dwarves and vampires and many, many, many more. She now makes friends and makes people smile with an ultimate goal. A goal to find who and what she is, and what secrets her existence holds.